Welcome, everybody. We'll just give folks a moment to get into the webinar, and then we will get started. Welcome, everyone. We'll give everybody a moment to get signed in here, and we'll get started shortly. All right, it looks like just about everybody has entered the room. So hello, everyone, and welcome to our Equity and Co-Production webinar series. Today's topic is expanding capacity for co-production. My name is Kristen Tim, and I'll be your host for today. I'm a research assistant professor in science communication and actionable science at the International Arctic Research Center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And I'm joining you today from the Trothyada campus in Fairbanks, Alaska, which is located on the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Lower Tanana Dene people. And in my own personal efforts to try to better understand this place, I'd like to just share a little bit about the language here. So Alaska is home to about 20 different distinct indigenous language groups. And Tanana Athabascan is the language group of this area. And actually, only about 30 people still speak this language. And one word you might hear around here is basi, which means thank you. And so thank you all for being here. Just, as a settler on these lands, I'm just really grateful for the past and present stewardship of the lands, and I'm really grateful for the privilege to work and live here. So this webinar series marks the culmination of a research project funded through the National Science Foundation entitled EAGER, Equity in Scientific Co-Production Processes. This is led by Cale Akerlof at George Mason University, and the work would not have been possible without the involvement of many additional folks, including our key partners and staff, our advisory board members, and then we also had a lot of involvement from folks who were engaged in the case studies that we researched and in a workshop that was held. Just want to note that any opinions, findings, and conclusions expressed or recommendations in this material are those of the authors and do not reflect the views of the National Science Foundation. And we're hosting this, which is the third of 4 webinars exploring insights related to equity in co-production. And today we're going to be talking about expanding capacity for co-production, featuring 3 presenters talking about 2 papers. And this whole series features panelists who are working across a range of institutions and roles who submitted articles to a journal special collection that we organized as part of the project. And this special collection of the journal Community Science is focused on equity and co-production. And the special issue, some of the articles are already published, but we hope to have all of the articles published in full by late 2024. And so please check out the journal for the open access articles as they're published. There's many great articles in various places in the review process at this time, so you can look forward to reading some great work here in the coming months. And I'll put the link to that in the chat, as well as the upcoming webinars here shortly. So the goal of the special collection was to showcase successes, best practices, and lessons learned in the design of equitable processes that facilitate co-production or community science with communities that may be experiencing barriers due to systemic racism, discrimination, limited access, or exclusion. I'd like to acknowledge the special collection editors that have been working with me in this process. And then I'd especially love to give a shout out to all of our reviewers that have been giving thoughtful peer reviews to the articles that have been submitted. So just to share a little bit about the journal Community Science, this is an open access journal. It's one of the newest journals of the American Geophysical Union, and the whole journal is focused on community science, which they define as science done together with communities to address community priorities. And the journal publishes articles on community science, articles that describe the results of community science, and articles that present scientific findings that are useful for community science. And they accept practice articles, project articles, review articles, and commentaries. And you can learn a lot more by visiting the Community Science website. It's also part of the Community Science Exchange, which shares other types of resources besides peer-reviewed articles. And the email is there if you have any questions for the journal editors. All right, so before we begin our panel, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping items. So because this is a webinar, all participants will be on mute, but you can adjust your settings on the lower bar in your Zoom window. This webinar is being recorded and the link will be available for replay. It will be emailed out to anyone who registered for the event afterward. For questions directed to our speakers, please use the question and answer feature located at the bottom of your screen. This will help us manage and address your questions more effectively during the Q&A portion of the webinar, which we should have plenty of time today for discussion. In that Q&A feature, you can see that you can upvote questions. So upvote questions that you would like to see me ask our panelists. And I'd just like to acknowledge that, you know, this event had enough registrants ahead of time that, you know, we felt that it was best to move this to a webinar format so that we could create a safe and space for our presenters. And so I recognize how important dialogue and sharing stories and networking with each other is for this kind of work. And I'm sorry that you do not have that ability to do that in the context of this webinar. And then just in conclusion, if you have any technical issues, please reach out to Zoom or your IT systems administrator. In conclusion, just anyone being disruptive or disrespectful in any way will be removed from the webinar immediately. And so now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So thank you all so much for joining us today and sharing your work. So each panelist is going to take some time to share a presentation with some of the findings from their work, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So our first presentation today will be from Kat McClure and Haley Canham. And then our second presentation will be from Daniela Navarro-Perez. And we'll follow these presentations with a question and answer session. So with that, I will turn it over to Kat, who will share their screen.
Thank you. Can you all see that?
Looks good.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Kat McClure. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Colorado State University and the USGS Fort Collins Science Center. However, previous to this, I was a PhD student at Utah State University, where I participated in the Southwest Climate Adaptation Science Center Fellowship along with Haley. And I'm going to hand it to Haley to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Haley Canham. I am a PhD student at Utah State University currently. And I also participated in the CASC Fellowship, and we're excited to talk to you guys today a little bit about it.
As Haley mentioned, we're going to talk about our experience in the fellowship, as well as the research project that was a part of the fellowship that is part of our paper. So for those of you who don't know, the Southwest CASC is a part of the consortium of 9 regions across the United States that's funded and supported by the USGS to provide regionally relevant scientific information, tools, and techniques to resource managers and communities. And specifically for the Southwest, we serve Arizona, Utah, California, and Nevada. The fellowship was the Natural Resources Workforce Development Fellowship, or NRWD for short. And this fellowship provided graduate students with opportunities for training and practice in developing use-inspired and actionable science to inform natural resource management decisions. And so our cohort involved 8 fellows across 6 universities in the Southwest CASC. This included Colorado State University. However, Colorado is not a part of the Southwest network. And so our fellowship involved an in-person event in September of 2022, where we met each other. We were part of some formal training, which I'll talk about in a couple of slides, and also started generating research ideas. This then moved to biweekly remote meetings with the fellows in the cohort, as well as 5 mentors. And it all culminated in a final project presentation in September of 2023, where we presented our research findings to resource managers in Logan, Utah, and also presented on our experience in the fellowship. As I mentioned, we were a part of a cohort of 8 graduate students, and so we'd like to recognize the other 6 members of our cohort and share that this is Haley and I are just 2 perspectives of our cohort. And so we want to recognize the other fellows who are part of this work, as well as the fellowship mentors who provided guidance and feedback throughout the year on our project and were a part of our training. And so this fellowship had 3 learning objectives. First, to teach each graduate student methods to foster development of science that informs resource management decisions, to interact and collaborate with natural resource management decision makers, and practice communication of research results to decision makers and natural resource managers. As I mentioned, we had formal training at the beginning of our fellowship, specifically a team science workshop, where we learned how to work on a team of scientists from all different research backgrounds, how to work through conflict management, come to agreements and decisions together as a team. And we also had training on the best practices of co-produced science. And we were able to practice these skills that we learned through informal training, through a research project with an assigned prompt. In our year, our prompt was climate-informed management of natural resources and aquatic ecosystems to support effective climate adaptation. And now I'm going to pass it over to Haley, who's going to talk about our research.
All right, thanks, Kat. Yeah, so as Kat said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the project that we developed and executed. So our scientific approach and research methods are identified here. First, we did regional spatial analysis looking at compounding climate events on aquatic systems. And then we paired that with interviews with natural resource managers for a selected case study. So next slide, Kat. So here, I'm just going to give you a quick, showing of our final results. So the project that we ended up doing was the spatial analysis. And here you can see our final kind of compounding extreme impairment map across the Southwest. And we developed this compounding event index. You can see this heat map where darker colors had more climate extreme events. So things like drought, flooding, intense precipitation, and wildfire. And we pulled out those watersheds that had impaired water quality. So this was kind of our main research finding of our project. Kat, if you want to go to the next one. And we paired that with the desire to look at how local community perspectives were responding to these climate extremes. And so as a cohort, we explored a wide array of different options, and we were really excited to try and get a community perspective. And some of us in particular were very, very excited about trying to work with Indigenous perspectives, but we were limited to a very short time frame. In addition to being remote, none of us really came in with strong relationships with any community organizations prior to this fellowship. And so where we ended up landing was doing a set of scripted interviews with 3 resource managers in Flagstaff, Arizona, which we kind of hand-selected as a case study. And we've identified these here. So the Ecological Restoration Institute at Northern Arizona, the Forest Service, the Coconino Forest, and the City of Flagstaff Wildland and Fire Management. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we had a set of scripted interviews. This is just one example question that we asked. What does your organization see as the greatest future climate change threats to aquatic environments in your community? And we paired the, is there like images here, Kat? Oh, there you go. So we went through the transcripts of all of our interviews and elicited what the findings using, coding, which is a brand new skill for all of us. So we kind of found that wildfire, extreme weather events, and water supply were the main drivers for this particular question. Next slide. We also pulled out a set of, interview question or quotes that we thought were unique and helped convey some of the points that we then leveraged to present in some of our final communication methods of this work. Here's an example quote. Kat, next slide. And so, as Kat mentioned, at the end of this fellowship, we did a final presentation last September, so a while ago now, and here we are today, still working on this. But we developed a final presentation. We've also developed a story map that presented this research, in addition to this paper, which we are more focused on what our experience within the fellowship itself was and the skills that we have developed throughout the experience. And if you're interested, you can read more about each of our individual experiences on the Southwest CAS website. We each wrote an individual blog post for our year. The QR code is there. Here's an example of just a few of them. And we're excited to take any questions that you might have about our fellowship experience with the CAS program. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kat and Haley. Daniela, I'll turn it over to you next.
Thank you, Christine. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, looks like you can now see my screen. Okay, cool.
Yep, it looks great.
All right. So, hello everyone. My name is Daniela Navarro-Perez. I'm a PhD student at the University of Leeds in Applied Geosciences. I'm currently living in the UK, in the north part of the island. And also I am a Latin woman from Chile. And I work as an assistant professor at the Universidad de Magallanes, which is located in the Chilean Patagonia. And today I will present about equity co-production through the lens of the Geotraductores initiatives, a collaborative effort to democratize science communication for Spanish-speaking communities, which is the paper that we submitted to this special issue. So, as we know in our time, science communication mainly occurs in English. It used to be in Latin, in French, German, and also in English, which possess a significant barrier for not English-speaking communities. So this language barrier limits access to critical scientific knowledge impacting decision-making and engagement in scientific discourse globally. And also, English is deeply intertwined with academic neocolonialisms, also maybe related to science parachutes as well in the global north, which also confines knowledge transfer only to English-speaking audiences. So solution to counteract this language barrier is to practice multilingual science communication cycle to ensure that non-speaking English communities can access to scientific news, exchange new and potentially beneficial findings, and engage in research that could impact them or their communities in their native languages. So in other words, to democratize science. And we define the democratization of science as the process of communicating science to the general public by breaking cultural and linguistic barriers facilitated by altruistic individuals and parties. So now I introduce to you geotraductores, or geotranslators in English. We are a collaborative initiative formed by EOS, which is the nonprofit news magazine published by AGU, the American Geophysical Union. Geolatinas, which is a nonprofit international organization with a mission to inspire, embrace, and empower Latin women to pursue and thrive in Earth and planetary sciences. And Estudios Planeteando, which is a scientific and social outreach project, mainly focused on Earth and environmental sciences based in Mexico. So our mission is to provide Spanish-speaking communities with access to current scientific findings by translating any article from English to Spanish, thus breaking the language barrier. So in these three organizations collaborate together through a co-production model that I'm going to show you later on. And we participate together in the EOS en Español project, which translates EOS articles in SciComm to Spanish, therefore amplifying the readership, and mostly our articles focus on Latin America. And we comprise more than 40 early career scientist volunteers. And so far we have translated more than 150 articles. This is an initiative working now for 4 years. And our translation workflow is through co-production, as I mentioned before, with these three parties. And also we have engaged with diverse stakeholders that have been involved, have used these articles in Spanish as well. So in the case of non-profit organizations, co-production can be used to counteract resources and tool limitations, which are essential for reaching the general public and fulfilling the objectives of each organization. And this approach differs from traditional co-production models, which often involve communities with agency in content selection and decision-making. So here we acknowledge sort of like an extension of the conventional definition of co-production, are transparent, that our model is a collaboration type. So the geotraductores co-production model can be exemplified as a science capacity building, a term you can find in this amazing paper that is actually Christine co-authored and is on the Journal of Community Science, wherein community organizations partner to co-produce through their members in STEM-related initiatives and actually participate as representative. In our case, the representatives are co-leaders. So our co-production consists of partnership between these organizations and volunteers, and the equity in co-production within volunteering organizations can effectively address inequities by enhancing organizations' capabilities to promote also the recognition and visibility of underrepresented groups. So this is our workflow, and which involves the three organizations with a specific tasks driven by our volunteers and co-leaders. So the first step is the article selection. So the EOS defines the categories of the articles to be translated, and then the volunteers select which article they want to translate. The idea is also it has to be a new article. And then they wait for approval, and then they start to do the process of translating and editing process, and then we send it to the editor in Planeteando, and the editor do the final proofreading involved. And if something needs to be changed, then the volunteer translator receives feedback about it. So once is approved, is published in EOS and also in Planeteando website, and also is advertised through social media, especially on Twitter, and I think it's Instagram as well. So this workflow ensures efficiency and accuracy in our translations. Here are some impacts and achievements. So 85% of our volunteers are Latin female geoscientists. And since our inception, Geotraductores has contributed to a significant increase in website traffic to EOS from Latin American countries, with notable surges in Colombia, Mexico, and Panama. Also, our volunteers have benefited from enhanced bilingual communication skills and also increased visibility and recognition when it's advertised in social media. Also, Planeteando, what it does, expands this translated information as short videos and infographics. So here's an example of a SciComm video on YouTube from the translated article. That's the title: Pollution Spike in Chile Tied to Soccer Fans Barbecuing. So in Santiago, what happens is tenfold pollution spikes during television soccer matches are caused by approximately 100,000 charcoal barbecues. So people do when they watch the soccer match, which leads to increases in particular matters. So it happens. So there's a relationship of poor air quality in the days that they are large-scale cultural events. So basically, that's something that Planeteando does as well. So to obtain insights, opinions, and perspective from all the participants involved in Geotraductores, we conducted a survey from July to August, and we asked our representatives the concept of equity in co-production, and each party indicated that it's a shared equal participation and responsibility in crafting a final product. And here are some impacts and corrective actions that we put it together on the paper. So, for example, in impacts, poor purity of translations. From some volunteers have created heavy workload for the co-leaders, and this is related with the second impact, which is the lack of compensation that hampers volunteering. So it happens in volunteering that when you don't have recognition or some way of compensation, you kind of inactivate yourself and you don't continue volunteering anymore. So some corrective actions we define are running periodic inductions and translation workshops. Also, we have evolved, and now our volunteers receive an incentive pay in their translation in the EOS en Español project. And also, we want to include a section of artificial intelligence translation tools and best practices in future workshops. Here are some identified strengths and recommendations. So we have tailored a good translation insight of strategy, which each partner that contributes equally in terms of resources and capacity. And also because we are all early career scientists in geosciences, we have been able to produce professional translations. And some recommendations, we are going to start actually next semester an annual review meeting of the co-production organizations to our volunteers to continue improving our initiative, and also to expand, increase recruitment calls to expand our volunteers. Here's some key points of our conclusions. So Geotraductores utilize a collaborative model for science communication, engaging volunteers across multiple organizations to ensure efficient co-production. This inclusive approach promotes equity by enhancing accessibility to the scientific knowledge for non-English-speaking communities. And additionally, our model supports early career researchers, helping them improve their translational skills and possibly impacting their professional trajectories. And looking ahead, we aim to focus on increasing multilingual SciComm content to better serve linguistically marginalized communities. And for that, we call those mainstream platforms to strengthen collaboration with nonprofit organizations in regions such as Latin America or Africa and others to promote decolonization and increase multilingual content. To that, and also so that way it can be sustained and enhance volunteering engagement through continuous reflection and adaptation of our strategies. Here are the references cited in this presentation, just for the recording. And if you would like to know more about Health Traductores or get involved, just feel free, please feel free to contact us. You can just visit EO's website and you will find, which is a multilingual platform. You will see also in other languages articles. In Gelatinas, we use the email blog at gelatinas.rng. And in Health Traductores, you can reach Anthony, our editor, in editorial at planeteando.org. I will just put that information on the chat post when I finished. And you can just type Gelatinas Planeteando and you will definitely find our social media accounts. Gracias por invitarme a presentar nuestro trabajo en este webinar. So thank you for inviting me to present our work in this webinar. My special thanks to my co-authors for their valuable contribution to the manuscript. And we invite the audience to contribute to a more equitable contribution of scientific knowledge and address the linguistic barrier that hinders the access to information to many, many regions around the world. And I would like to finish with our motto that says that it takes just one translation at a time. Thank you.
I love that motto. Thank you, Kat and Haley and Daniela, for your presentations. So we have plenty of time for discussion and questions from the audience. So before we dive into the discussion, I'd just like to introduce a concept to keep in mind, that is step up or step back. And that means if you find yourself having many opportunities to ask questions, consider stepping back to give others a chance to contribute. Conversely, if you tend to be quieter, or if you find yourself holding an identity or identities that are underrepresented in this space, we encourage you to step up and share your thoughts. Your questions can help really shape the conversation and move the conversation in important ways. So as a reminder again, please use the question and answer feature to share your questions. And I encourage you to upvote questions that you would like to see addressed. And I might just start with one question while we wait for some additional questions to come in. So this is for all of you as panelists. So you all, to some extent, addressed some of the resources or skills that you had and some of the things that you did not have access to. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about some of the resources or skills that you feel are needed to support people in participating effectively in co-production efforts, especially considering that you're bringing early career perspectives into this particular space. So I'll let whoever jump in first.
Yeah, I can get us started. So Kat and I were we're two graduate students on a fellow panel, as we discussed. We were I believe all 8 of us were very like science-oriented students. I'm a civil engineer. Kat, you're an ecologist. That was kind of the theme for all of us. And so community science and co-produced science was not even words really that like we generally encountered in our like degree programs. And so this CASC fellowship was just a really good eye-opening experience in the like need for this type of work, and also the like challenges that we encountered were numerous. And we talk a lot about that in our paper. And yeah, I think getting people exposed to these just like terms early and incorporating it into just maybe more like technical degree programs, you know, that are more traditionally like very technical and not more academia focused, can really help this process move forward. Yeah.
And I'll just add to that, I think something that would have benefited, I mean, we went through the fellowship and had this training, but I think in graduate degree programs, it would be great to have space in terms of time, but also resources to invest in co-produced science. Oftentimes, I think there isn't that opportunity, and the fellowship allowed us to learn the skills and practice the skills. And I'm not all graduate degree programs are like that, but I do think that we could improve graduate education through creating space and resources for co-produced science. And that was a big takeaway for me in the fellowship.
And I would like to say, so if for my case, it's nonprofit organization, basically, so it's volunteer. So a different side, which a lot of early career scientists volunteer to learn actually lack of skills that they have. In my case, like mainly is from Latin American people that actually leave their country and they go to an English speaking country to pursue a degree and to, get perfected, more training. And that means also to kind of get submerged in English, and then you kind of turn to be the bilingual and you lose sort of like the Spanish speaking. And it happened to me, like happened to all of us. And in terms of skills, what we want to actually is to look for fundings. There are a lot of fundings in the US through the NSF. Actually, we have also some partners that have received some grants, and that can help in terms of resources. Of course, now AI tools have been are very helpful in terms of translation, but there's also need to be perfected. We recognize that in the translators that are around, but in terms of psych contents co-production, we are the experts, and most of us are bilinguals. Mostly of us are from different places of the world, and we use English as our common language to communicate between each other. But we also, we do not tend to, use psych co-production to, get the message out there to actually the people that get the impact on that. So there's a lot of surveys and Latin American scientists that they have, academians can be a little bit bad in terms of that. They, push you to publish in very high-ranked journals, but they do not actually give incentive to academics to do psychom and apply co-production with the general public. So I will say institutions have to make a better effort in that.
Yeah, this is a common and longstanding critique, is that the institutional reward systems have not evolved quickly enough. And so I'm wondering if any of you have had instances where you felt like you did get properly sort of acknowledged for the work that you were doing, or had some recognition, or places where you see the system moving in the right direction.
I can mention one example from Chile. So actually there's an influencer, which is astronomer, and she actually won just recently a fellowship in the NASA, and it got in the news. So, and actually she got points because she was, creating psychom content in social media. So it's a plus. So she got recognized because of that. And actually now in our time, I think it's not only about publishing in academia, it's doing psychom, content, getting there. And I'm an engineer as well. And in engineering, We do not tend to publish as much because it's more technological stuff that we do. So we also have in my department, I mean faculty, we have that problem that not many engineers actually publishing papers, but we actually produce reports and we have prototypes and whatever, and that is not recognized actually. But I just wanted to put that there, a good example of being a good psychomer. It can be benefited for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add in terms of psychom, I know I did it in my PhD proposal, and it's being pushed more in certain programs, is creating a proposal for your science communication and how you're going to reach communities. And so you're held accountable to that, and that they create the space for that. And I did find that I had a lot of support for that. And so I do think things are changing, but whether or not there's the reward system for that, I haven't experienced that just yet, though I do feel like creating that space and in some ways demanding that we want science communication co-production to be a part of science moving forward. We need to make that change happen ourselves as well. And that's what I know I personally was trying to do by putting that in proposals. And I'm hoping that, given that it was well received within my department, I'm hoping that's a sign that things are changing.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I added, as Kat mentioned, like where your funding is coming from, will have maybe like a stronger emphasis on integrating and presenting your how you want to communicate your work, or more in a more academic setting. And so maybe being selective of where you get your funding from, so that is an emphasis, if and getting the funding to be able to do that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to a question in the Q&A from Alana. So could the first speakers please talk a bit more about the story map they created to convey their research? How did you all decide to create that, and what does it look like?
Sure, I can get us started. Thank you for your question, Alana. So for our project, we were basically given a sentence prompt with pretty much no strings attached, and we could do whatever we wanted with it. And so we came up with, a project and the deliverables and who we wanted to work with, all on our own as a cohort, and as a group of 8 that were working remotely. You could imagine some of the challenges that brought. And so we wanted to be able to convey our research project to a public audience, and that was not a peer-reviewed journal manuscript. And we landed on a story map as just a method that could be used to present our findings and our research in a similarly detailed way, but maybe with more emphasis on like images and like aesthetics that might be more appealing to a more public audience. And then it could also be distributed through the CASC program network, and the CASC network is very large, well-funded. They have a website that we were then able to leverage to get our findings out and use to post our story map and make it available. Kat, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add that I think a big choice in using the story map as well is that, as Haley mentioned in our presentation, we wanted to involve more of the community. However, we were limited to 1 year for designing the research and conducting the research, which meant that we'd also have to build those relationships in that short time frame. And that posed a challenge. And so we ended up working with natural resource managers. And so in a way to try to engage more with the community and get our findings out to the community, we thought that a story map would be an appropriate method So that way, while we weren't able to engage with the community as much as we would have liked from start to end, we hope that at least our findings would be more accessible to a broader audience, given the time constraints that we had.
All right, other questions? If anybody in the audience has questions, or if you have any questions for each other, Daniela?
I have a question actually.
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
your fellowship. Yeah, I just want, you mentioned a lot of your process, but can you mention a little bit of the reception of the general public? How was that experience?
Well, I don't know, Haley, were you gonna?
Oh no, go. You can start, Kat.
To be honest, we presented to a group at in Logan, Utah, as I mentioned. However, that was mostly focused on natural resource managers once again. So in terms of who our story map has reached, we don't have any metrics on that. You know, and given that it was focused on Flagstaff, Arizona. Haley and I were based in Logan, Utah. So whether or not folks were able to access that and talk about that, what we found in Flagstaff, I hope that was the case. And we shared it with the natural resource managers that we worked with in hopes that they could share it with their communities. But in terms of how it was received, we didn't receive any feedback on that. I think it would be useful for us to receive feedback whether or not our methods and our presentation worked, and how we could adjust how we presented our findings and how we engaged with the community, or in this case, the natural resource managers. I think would have been a great learning opportunity for us. However, unless Haley knows any more on that.
I don't, and I really appreciate this question, Daniela. And I think this kind of goes back to the format of the fellowship itself, in that we were given 1 year to, or like, we applied to this fellowship. We had 1 year being in the fellowship from like September of 2022 to the next September of 2023. It is July of 2024. And so we, as you can imagine, working with a group of other students up against a kind of tight deadline, you're like really working to get your final project out there. And then as soon as September 2023 was over, and the fellowship, was officially over, there's no obligation to like keep following up with that project and that work. And so that, the format of the fellowship, maybe in order to get those metrics, to answer your question, was probably too short, in that like there's no more obligation to do this project anymore. Like, I'm out. And yeah, and so it was an interesting, it would have been an interesting thing if people had stuck around, or we had like gotten our results out earlier than the end of the fellowship. But life happens and you end your commitment and off you go. So something to think about if anybody's, looking to set up a training program that is similar to this, of that follow through, and how much you want trainees to like be able to learn from follow through.
Yeah, and I'll add that was one of the biggest takeaways, I think, in most of the fellows' feedback at the end, was that we all wish we had 1 extra year for a lot of different reasons. Yeah, finishing the project, but also building those community relationships that we were talking about that weren't already previously established, would have helped us better engage with the community. So.
All right, and there's another question here in the chat. And so this says, thanks for sharing the meaningful project, Daniela. Could you please introduce the standard of how you chose what to translate? If you have any specific priority for information conveyed.
And thank you, Canham. Yeah, so it's free. So it's, there's just categories. There's a lot of categories. So opinions, spotlights, research. I forgot the other ones. There are like 5 or 6 categories in the articles, but there are many disciplines. So it's up to the volunteer. And actually in a paper we put like, it's very diverse. We don't have a bias to earth, environmental sciences or pollution or in a different region. Like I have translated, well, I actually translate the one that I mentioned about the soccer and when people do barbecues. And I also translated a beautiful article about Disney princesses that are being geoscientists in Spanish. It's a great article. And something related to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So it's very diverse. And actually, I think that's why we have many volunteers engaged, because they choose what to translate. So because we also want to continue this to be something volunteer. We receive pay now, but we have to work volunteer for 3.5 years to receive that recognition and get paid. And actually now, if you visit the website, now they are creating the audio, so the recording voice, so you can actually have the written format and the audio format now, and it's going to be shown in Spanish as well. So I just want to mention that. And also I would like to mention that some of our volunteers have matured their translation skills and have received actually different jobs. Like I myself work as an interpreter here in the university in a network collaboration they had here. Some people went to Wikipedia and translate and convert, go to that community and start translated from English to Spanish, also Wikipedia pages. So yeah.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of there's a paper published by Aparna Vamzai-Dodson in the last couple years, and her colleagues, talking about how like relevance is so important, and it's not necessarily a burden if people can find the value in why they're engaging. So that relevance piece sounds really key for the work that you're doing. So here's another question that came in here for Kat and Haley. Any thoughts or recommendations for successfully working with short timelines in co-production? And then a question here for Daniela. Any models and strategies that you would recommend to engaging with volunteers?
Do I go first? You want to go first?
I can go first, since I
Go
guess
ahead, Haley.
All right. Desiree, thank you for your question. I think our short timeline was, discussed kind of throughout the year. We, as a cohort, didn't really settle on a project until maybe like 6 months into the process. And so, given that, because we were trying to find something that we were all interested in, that we all had capacity to do. And then also none of us really brought any existing contacts to the table. So we were like pretty much starting from scratch, which made it really difficult. And in like actually forming, a relationship, something that we thought would have been really helpful for us to begin with was maybe if the fellowship or the mentors itself who had set up the fellowship had identified like an interested stakeholder to begin with, to for us to start kicking around ideas of what kind of project we were interested in, because the whole project development and execution was all on our own, and that is pretty unique setup for a project, kind of in the academic world, where you pretty much have like open funding to do whatever you want with and work with whoever you want. And so I think in the structure of the fellowship, if it had been a little bit more structured up front, we would have been able to more fully use our year instead of really like crush things into our last, like, honestly, like 3 to 4 months of our year. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd add, I think in certain situations, I mean, this was pretty unique for co-produced science in the sense that, yeah, we had funding in an open topic idea, and we went to folks trying to create a research project. But I think it might be more realistic if there was a problem that was presented in the community, and we could start from the beginning working with them and talking about whatever that topic of interest is, and that might have helped facilitated things or helped move things quicker. But in terms of this particular fellowship, just because it was so open-ended from the beginning, it was difficult. And I'd also add, I think another aspect of the fellowship was working on a team of scientists that was an aspect that we were working through as early career scientists who hadn't necessarily had that experience before. So we were coupled with working on a team of scientists, learning that process, but also learning about co-produced science at the same time. That probably slowed things down a bit more as well. But I do think in maybe a more realistic setting, co-produced science could happen in that short time frame, though I think one of the bigger takeaways is that community-driven science, it shouldn't be moving at the academic rate that we work in academia, which is really fast. Get the funding, do your science, and get the paper out. Oftentimes, that's not how the rest of society works. So, creating funding timelines that are realistic to working with communities is really important, and building that into your grants and having funders support that extended timeline would prevent needing to push everything into a very shortened time frame.
I will answer the question. So I think it was models or strategies. I was just talk about my experience. So in Georginas, we practice 2 strategies, I will say. One is co-leadership, and the other one is peer mentoring. So we have what we do, we train each other. What you lack, maybe I will have, and I will mentor you. And we will work both ways. So we do deliver resources and tools, the ones that we are kind of like in the mid-career, senior, and we help the younger early careers to be trained. But in terms of engagement, I will say find the way of interest, of why the person wants to be volunteer, and you have to tell them what would be beneficial for you, what you will gain in terms of skills, in terms of networking. And in Georginas, we practice a lot, peer mentoring. We do a lot of things. We talk about that. And also, in our case, it's the sense of belonging. So in terms of us, it's a cultural thing. So we call it a Latin sisterhood. And sometimes, and we welcome everybody. It doesn't matter if you're Latino or not. It doesn't matter if you identify as male or women or non-binary. It doesn't matter really. We have people from every part of the world. Just they feel very welcome in our organization because we are like that. We just very relaxed to talk about it. But the engagement, I will say, find an interesting point, but also highlight the benefits that the volunteer will gain by volunteering. And the last thing would be the recognition. It's very important to recognize the volunteers in some way, whether in social media, like a feature in social media, or maybe invite them to participate in a panel or to organize a panel. And that way that person can, grow their skills and then just jump in. And you will be so proud of that volunteer that started from here and now he's being promoted at work or whatever, and you keep in touch. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for such a great discussion today and great presentations. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us today. I just want to point out that The link to the special collection of community science is in the chat, and so keep an eye out for these forthcoming articles. Also, our last webinar of this series will be on July 10th, focused on climate services, and the presenters will be Simone Justin Dominique from Tulane and Julian Reyes from the Bureau of Land Management. And yeah, thank you all again for your contributions today and for sharing your lessons that you've learned from your projects and your insights on how we make co-production more equitable. And I hope everybody has a beautiful rest of your day. And for those in the US, have a wonderful and safe holiday weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.